Breaking tonight, a horrifying new video of yet another American journalist being beheaded, adding new urgency to the question, what should the United States be doing about the terrorist army behind this? Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. The story broke a little after 1 p.m. Eastern Time. A video had surfaced appearing to show journalist Steven Sotloff reading a statement clearly under duress right before a hooded terrorist from the group ISIS cut off his head. The posting was titled, quote, "A second message to America." The 31-year-old Sotloff grew up in Miami, decided on a career in journalism out of college, and based himself in the Middle East, where he filed pieces for Time magazine and others. He disappeared a year ago while reporting from a Syrian town. Trying to document the barbarism there, he ultimately became a victim of it. This is the second time in as many weeks we have seen an American murdered on camera by this group. The British Prime Minister has already released a statement calling this a despicable, disgusting act. He says ISIS is a threat to the British homeland and is implementing a crackdown on local extremists. Our president so far has said nothing about the second American to be decapitated by ISIS. Late last week, he did announce that we have no strategy for dealing with this group yet. And in the latest twist tonight, the Pentagon, moments ago confirming that a new group of a few hundred American soldiers now headed to Baghdad to boost security at our embassy there, just 9 days before America remembers the 9/11 terror attacks. Ed Henry just filed this report from Estonia, where President Obama arrives tonight.
Good evening, Megyn. The president taking this trip to try to showcase himself on the world stage, but immediately starting out on defense, under pressure tonight on a range of fronts. First of all, that videotape allegedly showing ISIS beheading a second American journalist, raising new questions about the administration's approach there with dealing with the terrorists. But secondly, the president stopping here in Estonia first to send a signal to Russian President Vladimir Putin, because I'm just standing right now about 100 miles from the Russian border, and later this week, the president and NATO allies are going to announce a rapid response team of about 4,000 NATO troops that would be stationed here in Europe to push back on Russian aggression. Well, Russian officials today fired back that they'll adjust their military strategy accordingly if NATO expands. And then there's a leaked report that Putin, in a phone call with the president of the European Commission, threatened that he'll simply just take Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, within 2 weeks if he wants to. A sign that Putin is sort of shrugging off the president's moves here in this region. Bottom line on the videotape is the president left Washington without commenting on this alleged beheading. U.S. officials say that's because they're trying to authenticate this videotape. The intelligence community pouring through it late this evening as we speak. Bottom line, though, is the president won't be able to duck questions about this for long. He has a news conference here in Estonia tomorrow, likely to get questions not just about the videotape, but remember that news conference back at the White House last week where the president admitted he does not have a strategy yet to deal with ISIS militarily in Syria. Likely to be pressed on that, Megyn.
Ed Henry, thank you. Joining us now with more, Brit Hume, our Fox News senior political analyst. Brit, good to see you tonight. And so let me start with the broader question of ISIS and what to do about them. The president famously said not long ago, "I was elected to end wars, not to start them." How big a role do you think that is playing in his announcement that we don't yet have a strategy for dealing with this terror army?
Well, what he said, of course, Megyn, was he doesn't have a comprehensive strategy for dealing with ISIS as it exists throughout the Middle East. That is to say, not only in Iraq, where it's been so active recently, but also in Syria, where it is based. And, of course, this came after his own military leaders had said that ISIS could not be defeated without being taken on in Syria. He said we don't have a strategy to do that, and there was no sign at the time that he viewed the task of creating such a strategy or deciding on one, which I think would be closer to it, with any urgency. This is a man, Megyn, whose vision of the world as he had when he took office has turned out to be a mirage. And his own sense of the world and how it would react to him has also turned out to be a mirage. I think he really, this is a man, Megyn, who told someone I know before he was running for office, when he was in the Senate, he was contemplating a run for president, wouldn't it be great for the world if I were president? And I think he truly believed, Megyn, that the size of the American footprint in the world, particularly militarily, was a big reason for the troubles we had, and that if he were elected, with the approach that he took and with the idea that he was going to end the wars, reduce the American footprint, and that he would be such a breath of fresh air on the world stage that our adversaries, Iran, our even antagonists such as Russia, would look at him differently and look at the United States differently. Well, they have. They've decided the United States is weak, and it's time for them to go on the march, as indeed they have.
He said this explicitly, and we actually have the soundbite. I was going to use it a little later with Andy McCarthy. I don't know if we have it now. Yeah, we do. Listen, just to prove your point, I didn't know you were going to say that, but just so the audience can hear it from then Senator Obama himself, take a listen to him in November 2007.
Well, I truly believe that the day I'm inaugurated, not only does the country look at itself differently, but the world looks at America differently. If I'm reaching out to the Muslim world, they understand that I've lived in a Muslim country, and I may be a Christian, but I also can understand their point of view. And I think that the world will have confidence that I am listening to them. That will ultimately make us safer.
That's it, Megan. There you have it. I mean, that's what he thought, and I think, obviously that's not turned out to be the case. And, I think he is now confronted with the world as he thought he knew it is not the world it is. And I don't think he knows what to do, and I think he is a man who turns out, for all his apparent intelligence, to be a slow learner on a number of things and extraordinarily not adaptable. Think of Bill Clinton, for example. His party took a terrible bath after the Hillary Care fiasco in the 1994 midterm elections, lost control of the House of Representatives for the first time in many decades, and he adjusted and came back to win a spectacular victory only a couple of years later. Well, this president has never really adjusted to the fact that the world has not panned out as he thought it would, and he seems incapable of doing so.
But it wasn't.
And he seems almost paralyzed. I mean, think of this, Megan. An American is murdered in plain view of the world today. Now, obviously, some verification needed to be done and all the rest of it, but all he had to do is add a caveat to any statement he made that, if this proves to be real, this is a hideous atrocity that will not go unavenged, or something to that effect. The British Prime Minister had no trouble coming out and making a strong statement. At this hour, the president, as you mentioned earlier, has not uttered a peep. This is a man who seems not to know what to do next. And the result is that the forces around the world who would like to advance when Uncle Sam isn't active in the world, they're taking advantage.
He's taking criticism now, not just from those on the right, but also from those on the left. Over the weekend, Dianne Feinstein accused him of being too cautious when it comes to ISIS. Just today, former Democratic Representative Jane Harman came out and said he should have come out after this American was beheaded and used that as an opportunity to make the case to the American people that we are going to have to get involved here more significantly militarily. These are people on the left, Britt. I mean, the left put him in office in large part because they believed what he said. He was going to go in there and end wars, not start them.
Well, that was certainly, look, he's tried to do that. The problem is, if you end a war by withdrawing from the battlefield, the war is over and you lose. And that's not what I think many Americans consider a desirable outcome. Now, many Americans believe to this day that Iraq was a cause not worth fighting for, although the Iraq that was bequeathed to President Obama when he took office was in a lot better shape than the Iraq we see today. And now we're seeing a similar scenario play out in Afghanistan, where the president surged troops into that country, a commitment that he basically had made and his party had made going back some time, but announced at the same time when he was leaving. Now, that looks like it's all going to turn out very badly indeed. And so what we see now is that it all isn't panning out the way he thought. And what he's tried to do repeatedly, of course, is redefine the threats down. Remember, al-Qaeda was not a large growing movement. It was core al-Qaeda that we were at war with. And once Osama bin Laden was killed, of course, that war was considered won. ISIS, you remember, these were the JV of terrorism. Now they turn out to be something far more monstrous even than al-Qaeda, although they are very much an outgrowth of the al-Qaeda he claimed to have defeated. So there we are. And my sense about this is that he doesn't really know what to do. And I think that on some level, he thinks this will all somehow play out and these are somebody else's fights. The problem is that look, he may be right in thinking that the world ought to do more than it does and shouldn't leave so much to the United States of America to be the world's cop, the cop on the beat. The problem is that even if that's true and that's a fair argument, the question is whether you can afford to let that play out in the way that it might if the world doesn't step up. And the history is, over many, many decades now, dating well back into the last century, that if the United States doesn't step up and lead and doesn't put its military out front and does not conduct diplomacy with the threat of force always in the background, that good things don't happen.
Yeah.
And that is where we are today. Good things are not happening, and the United States has stepped back, and that did not make the situation better as President Obama imagined it would.
As even Hillary Clinton said, a vacuum is left behind. Britt, good to see you again.
Thanks, Megan.
Well, there was one question at today's State Department briefing that became more significant than perhaps any other. Listen.
So now we have on the books 2 American journalists beheaded by this group. Is there any doubt on your part or the part of this administration that, in fact, the United States is at war with ISIS?
James Rosen is here on why the administration response is now getting so much attention. But first, what could be the most fascinating interview of the night? We will speak next with a former Islamic extremist on the thinking that led to those beheadings and what it will take to stop this terror army. Don't miss this. Do you feel that now, with, you mentioned President Obama admitting that we have no strategy, how is that taken, do you think, by these radical Islamists? Do you think that they revel in that? They view us as less of a threat? What do you think?